are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Tuesday, May 21st. We have a lot to talk about on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is gsmcpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So I hope everybody's doing well. I know it's been a little bit since we last spoke, but I am back, and I hope you guys didn't miss me too much. So let's get into what we are going to talk about for today. So we're going to start off the show. I'll continue my rankings of each team in each division. Today we will be doing the AFC South, and I just realized that I have the NFC South labeled on the show segment. So, because we already did the NFC South, so good catch by me there. So that will be the start of the show. Then in the second part of the show, I'll talk about T. Higgins and give you some updates on that. He still hasn't signed the franchise tag, so we'll get into that as well. Then we'll also talk about some comments made by Jordan Poyer, the former safety for the Buffalo Bills, now with the Miami Dolphins, talking about Josh Allen. So I wanted to get into that. Then we will talk about a couple of quarterbacks that are looking for new deals in Trevor Lawrence and Tua Tagovailoa, so we'll get into that as well. And then we will talk about the Giants' defensive line. With their acquisition of Brian Burns and pairing him up with Kayvon Thibodeau and Dexter Lawrence, the Giants got something on the defensive line, and there might not be a lot of things that Giant fans are excited about when it comes to this team and how this team is going to perform in 2024, but I think when you look at the defense, that could be something to at least look forward to for this upcoming season, because there's some other issues that they still have to address, and it's probably not going to be addressed this year, but again, focus on the defense and hope that they do well at least. But yeah, that's the rundown for the show today. Like I said, hope everybody's doing well, and already we're off to a great start having the NFC South labeled instead of the AFC South. So with that, let's get into the first topic, which is talking about the AFC South. And yeah, this is a division that was kind of a laughingstock in years past. And last year, it seemed like it was going to be the Jags that were just going to run away with this division. But that ended up not happening because the Jags ended up collapsing, and the Texans ended up winning the division themselves, going to the playoffs, winning a playoff game. And now, going into this year, the Texans are the favorites. And let's get into it now. So I do have a graphic, and like I've been doing recently. So there you go. You got the four teams there. You got the Titans, the Colts, the Jaguars, and the Texans. So we'll start at the bottom. And I don't think there's necessarily a bad team in this division, but I think that, of course, you have to rank someone last. Now, I don't necessarily think that every team has a shot at the playoffs, But, these teams have made improvements. And then you also have teams like the Jags that are looking to bounce back and, try to forget about their late season collapse. And the Texans just got better. So, I expect them to, like I said, be the favorites to win this division. But at number 4, I do have the Tennessee Titans. And they have made a lot of moves this offseason. They drafted a tackle to try to build this offensive line and protect their young quarterback. They went out and they signed Calvin Ridley to a big contract. They also signed Tyler Boyd recently to go along with DeAndre Hopkins. And then when it comes to the running back position, they did lose Derrick Henry, but you bring in Tony Pollard, who's looking to have a better 2024 and be another year removed from his injury that he suffered in the playoffs a couple of years ago. And then on top of that, you also traded for L'Jarius Sneed from the Kansas City Chiefs to help out that secondary on the defensive side. So I think it's really all, and you got a new head coach coming over from the Bengals and Brian Callahan. So, I think that the Titans, they can be a better team. It's really all going to come down to how Will Levis performs. And I think that they put Will Levis in a good situation. It's really going to be up to him and his growth. And I feel like, again, I think this division is going to be tough, but I feel like I think they could at least be competitive. And Will Levis had a great debut, but other than that, it was kind of a hit or miss with him. So, and he's got a strong arm, and he's got weapons now. Now, if this was his receiving core a few years ago, you'd be like, wow, this could be the best receiving core in the NFL. But, DeAndre Hopkins is getting older, Calvin Ridley's getting older. Tyler Boyd I think he's just turning 30. So, yeah, the receiving core is on the older side, but I still think these guys can produce. But I don't know. For me, I like the other 3 teams. So right now I got the Titans ranked as the number 4 team. 3, I got the Colts. And it was, for me, it's kind of a toss-up between them and the Jags. Because, the Colts and the Jags, they just missed out on the playoffs last year. I mean, the Jags, they looked like they were going to be a lock to make the playoffs, but then they collapsed. The Colts were kind of hanging around and trying to make that late season push, and they just missed out on the playoffs. And it was against the Texans. They lost a really tough game, and that was with Gardner Minshew at quarterback, and now he's no longer there. Now you got Anthony Richardson for a full season. And in his limited time, Anthony Richardson looks like he's going to be a good player for this team. But we got to see it. It's still kind of unknown, but I think they have their guy moving forward. If he can continue what he was doing before he got hurt, and on top of that, you're getting Jonathan Taylor for the full season. He's not going to be missing the first few games again. This team's going to be good. And you signed Michael Pittman. You locked him up long term. You got some young receivers as well. You drafted one this year, to go along with the other guys that you have. The defense is still, pretty good. I think that this team, if Anthony Richardson's healthy, they're going to be a competitive team as well. So, but right now it's kind of a toss-up between them and the Jags. But right now I'm still going to rank them 3. And I have the Jags at 2. So we'll go now to the Jags. And they're looking to turn the page on last season. I know we'll talk about Trevor Lawrence a little later in the show. But, Trevor Lawrence got banged up towards the end of the year, and that was part of the problem as to why they collapsed. I mean, I guess it really all started when they lost to the Bengals with Jake Browning playing quarterback. Trevor Lawrence got hurt in that game. That was a game that the Jags should have won. They ended up losing. And that kind of, I think that was the game that kind of started their collapse. I mean, I have to go back and look, but when they beat the Texans in Houston, I thought, okay, the division's over. But that was not the case. You know, they did lose Calvin Ridley, but they drafted Brian Thomas Jr. You still got Evan Ingram there. You still got Christian Kirk. They also signed Gabe Davis as well. You know, you're looking for another big year out of Travis Etienne. You added Eric Armstead to that defensive line to go along with Walker and Josh Allen. We'll be talking about Josh Allen, but the quarterback, Josh Allen. So I feel like the Jags will bounce back. But if they don't, well, then there's going to be changes. Doug Peterson is probably going to lose his job, and the general manager is probably going to lose his job. So this is a big year for the Jags. But I'm going to have them at 2. And then at 1, it's the Houston Texans, a team that I like a lot. Love what they've done this offseason. Last year, not many people expected them to do much, but they exceeded expectations. They won the division, they won a playoff game, and they're looking to take another step forward in 2024. Now you add Stephon Diggs to that receiving core with Nico Collins and Tank Dell. You know, you brought back Dalton Schultz. You got Joe Mixon. Again, Joe Mixon, you know, is not what he was a few years ago, but I think this is a good situation for him. And then you got the defense. They went out and they got Danielle Hunter and Anthony Van Ginkel in free agency. You know, they lost Jonathan Grenard, who went to the Vikings. So the Texans were like, all right, well, we'll take your pass rusher then, and Danielle Hunter, go along with Will Anderson Jr. They're really building something over there in Houston, and I think that that's going to continue. And I have them at number 1. I think they are going to win this division, and we'll see what happens, and we'll see how they stack up against the Ravens again, and we'll see when they play the Kansas City Chiefs and the Bills and these other teams. I mean, we saw how they played against Joe Burrow. They beat the Bengals in Cincinnati, so now let's see how they match up against some of these other teams as well. So, yeah, just to reiterate, Titans, I got at 4, Colts at 3, Jags at 2, Texans at 1. But, again, I think this is another division that can be competitive. And I think that, you know, for the Titans, if Will Levis can take a big step forward in year 2, you know, the Titans could be a problem. And then if Anthony Richardson stays healthy, and you got Jonathan Taylor back there for a full year now, they're going to be in the mix. The Jags, they've been a playoff team before, and it looked like they were going to make the playoffs very easily, but that didn't happen. They're looking to bounce back. And then you got the Texans, who only got better. So looking forward to the matchups between these teams and these young quarterbacks. But let me know what you guys think about the AFC South. How would you rank these teams? So we're going to take our first break of the show, and then when we come back, we will discuss the latest on T. Higgins, the drama surrounding him, and that's what we will do when we come back from our second break of the first break of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits, some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip, you choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are going to talk about T. Higgins, player that I've talked about a lot this offseason. Just the latest on the drama surrounding that. So, still not with the Bengals at the moment, and he has not signed his franchise tag contract tender yet, and he's not expected to sign the tender by next week, making him ineligible for the Bengals OTAs. So that's starting, and you got some players that haven't made an appearance yet on other teams as well. But yeah, it's we're still kind of waiting on when T. Higgins will eventually, report, and will he sign this franchise tag, or is he just gonna hold out and force the Bengals' hand? And I'm not really sure because I'm not close to the situation. I know that I've said that T. Higgins will at least play with the Bengals this year, and then they'll probably end up moving off of him and trading him somewhere else for him to get a big contract, because they still have Jamar Chase on this team. And to me, it seems like Jamar Chase is more the priority. And you can't keep everybody. That happens to a lot of teams. You just can't keep everybody. And T. Higgins, unfortunately for him, is probably going to end up going elsewhere and getting paid elsewhere. But you know what? That's fine, because he's going to end up getting paid regardless. I don't know where he's going to end up, but it's going to be a team that really needs a wide receiver. So I don't know when this whole situation is going to resolve itself, but T. Higgins, if he gets paid, it's going to be with another team. And he's been a good player for the Bengals. We know this. He's made some big plays for them in the postseason as well. But, it's just unfortunate that, this group is slowly breaking up, because, Tyler Boyd left as well. They traded Joe Mixon to Houston, and now you got Zach Moss and Chase Brown. Those are going to be your two running backs going into next year. Now, Zach Moss was, filling in for Jonathan Taylor. He was pretty good. And Chase Brown was making plays towards the end of the year. They did bring in Mike Gesicki on a cheap deal, to help out at the tight end spot. It's really going to come down to Joe Burrow being healthy with how far this team can go. And we all know this. But in the short term, they're still going to have T. Higgins. In the long term, he's probably going to end up getting traded elsewhere. But we've seen this happen before with guys not signing the franchise tag, and then eventually they force their way out and they go to another team. So this could be the latest now with T. Higgins. And there's other wide receivers looking for new deals. You got Justin Jefferson looking for one. CeeDee Lamb is looking for a new deal. Brandon Ayuk is looking for a new deal. I mean, there could be... Now, I don't think all these guys are going to end up going to other teams. I think T. Higgins is one of those players that could be traded out of that group. I think CeeDee Lamb's ultimately going to stay in Dallas. I think Justin Jefferson is ultimately going to stay with the Vikings. But I think when you look at Brandon Ayuk and you look at T. Higgins, I think those are two guys that could be traded and go elsewhere. Because the 49ers, they have other receivers. They just drafted one. And they still got Deebo Samuel as well. And with the Bengals, you have Jamar Chase. It's not like, you're trading away your only star receiver. Like, the Bengals, they have Jamar Chase. So they could trade T. Higgins, and yeah, you're going to miss him, but you still have another solid wide receiver who's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. Now, the Vikings, I mean, Justin Jefferson is, to me, the best receiver in the NFL, so you don't want to lose him. I mean, Jordan Addison had a solid rookie season, but, let's see how he is now in year 2. Can he be a number 1? I think some people think he can be, but you don't want to lose Justin Jefferson. And especially when you have a young quarterback that's going to be taking over at some point. You want to surround him with as much talent as possible. And losing the best wide receiver in the NFL would not be good. But like I said, I think Justin Jefferson is ultimately going to stay with the Vikings. And then when it comes to the Cowboys, CeeDee Lamb really is, their only star receiver. I mean, in the past you had Amari Cooper opposite of him, and Amari Cooper was looked at as the number 1 wide receiver, but once he was gone, then CeeDee Lamb really took over. I mean, you got Brandon Cooks, who's getting older. They let go of Michael Gallup. CeeDee Lamb is the guy. So Dallas doesn't want to lose him. Now, they could end up losing their quarterback, which is a completely different story, but CeeDee Lamb, I think he'll stay in Dallas. I think that we could see Brandon Ayuk and T. Higgins going elsewhere. But like I said, we've seen this happen where guys refuse to sign the franchise tag and then they end up forcing their way out and going to another team. So this is something that's going to continue to be going on as we get into the summer and we get closer and closer to the start of the season. But this is far from over. Now, T. Higgins has expressed his gratitude of Cincinnati. He spoke very highly of the city, how he loves it there. And he wants to stay there. But at the same time, he wants to get paid. And the Bengals, I think, are going to try to keep him as well, but they have a different price. And if they can't meet in the middle, then he's going to end up going somewhere else. So, again, we'll just have to keep an eye on it. The Bengals, listen, if their squad is healthy, they're going to be one of the best teams in the AFC. And they got a couple of guys, like right now, that are looking for new contracts. You got Trey Hendrickson on the defensive side of the ball. He requested a trade. Can't talk today. Yeah, this core that made it to the Super Bowl, I mean, it's, they're slowly but surely losing guys. But they got Joe Burrow. They're going to have to build this team back up if they start losing guys from that Super Bowl run. I'm not saying if they lost, T. Higgins that they're just going to suddenly be terrible. You got Joe Burrow, and as long as they protect him, they're going to be fine. But there's still a little bit of concern regarding the wrist injury that he suffered. And also, on social media, the picture of him with long hair, it's really odd to see him with long hair. But I know I saw that was floating around. But he's got to stay healthy. He's got to stay healthy. And you could say that about a lot of teams and a lot of players across all sports. But that's really what it comes down to. Because when Joe Burrow was healthy, that offense was really clicking. And they looked like they were going to go on another run. And then he unfortunately got hurt with the wrist. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it when talking about T. Higgins. Again, let me know what you guys think about the latest on the T. Higgins drama. Does he get his new deal with the Bengals, or does he end up getting it with another team? Does he play with the Bengals in 2024? Because, again, he's not signing he didn't sign the franchise tag yet, and he can't, join the Bengals until he signs it. So Does he stay with the Bengals this year, or do the Bengals end up moving off of him and he goes elsewhere? Let me know what you guys think. So before we go to break, just want to remind you guys again. Sorry, I got to switch up the stuff here. But just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is GSMCpodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is GSMCpodcast.net. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So when we come back from our second break of the show, we will then talk about what Jordan Poyer had to say about Josh Allen, former safety for the Buffalo Bills, now with the Miami Dolphins. So we will get into that when we come back from our second break of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to talk about some comments made by former Bills safety Jordan Poyer, now with the division rival in the Dolphins. Some comments he had to make recently about, the Bills, kind of saying goodbye to them. Also, I wanted to talk about the main thing, and that is him praising Josh Allen. So this is what Jordan Poyer had to say recently. He said, 7 years out here, man. I loved every moment of it. Thank you so much for allowing me to grow as a person, as a player, teammates, coaches, everybody. I loved every moment of it. Sorry we couldn't get it done, but you've got the best quarterback in the league. I know that might go viral, but it's okay. I get to see you guys twice a year. I can't wait. You guys come down to Miami. I get to go back to Orchard Park one more time. And, now he's with Tua Tagovailoa, and, that might hurt his feelings a little bit. Not really. But, yeah, that was some strong comments made there by Jordan Poyer, saying that it could go viral with what he said about Josh Allen being the best quarterback in the NFL, but that was his guy for a long time. And, he didn't want to leave Buffalo, but, the Bills, they had to let some guys go, and he was one of them. And now he's with the division rival. But, yeah, that's the main thing I wanted to talk about is Josh Allen. Now, Josh Allen really has elevated his game. You go back to his rookie year, and he wasn't very good. But then he slowly started to make progress. His second year, the Bills made it to the playoffs. They actually should have beaten the Texans, but that ended up not happening. And, they lost that game in overtime. But then they got Stephon Diggs. And, things kind of changed after that. And the Bills, they, for the last few years, they were looked at as, being Super Bowl contenders. But they have fallen short quite a few times. And particularly to the Kansas City Chiefs. You go back to the championship game during the COVID season. You go back to the divisional round, in the 2021-2022 playoffs, which was, one of the greatest playoff games you'll ever see. With that finish to the game, going to overtime, and Josh Allen didn't get the ball. Gabe Davis had 4 touchdowns in that game. So you had that. And then you had the game last year. It was played in 2024. So the game from this year where you were the home team this time. And the Chiefs were coming in. Patrick Mahomes, his first road playoff start. And they couldn't get it done. Now, there's blame to go all around. It's not just going to be pointed on one individual. But, yeah, the Bills are a team that have come up short. And you also go back to the year before that against the Bengals. Bengals walked in to Buffalo, into Orchard Park, and they dominated. And now going into 2024, the Bills, like I said, they let go of a lot of guys. There's no more Stephon Diggs. And the Bills are kind of looked at as this inferior team now. Now, when I did my AFC East rankings, I had the Dolphins ranked 3rd. I had the Bills ranked 2nd. And, of course, the Jets at 1, which is highly controversial. And I'm going to stand by it. Because I did think about it. And, look, I like the Dolphins playmakers on offense a lot better than the Bills. But the Bills have the far better quarterback. Tua was solid last year, but, again, I don't think he's the long-term answer there. But you could also say, well, what's the alternative? But for me, the Bills got their long-term answer, and that's Josh Allen. And this is a big year for him. Because now you don't have Stephon Diggs anymore. And Stephon Diggs really was a non-factor in the offense, in the second half of the season. He didn't have a lot of big games. Now, you look at this receiving core, they drafted a receiver. You have Khalil Shakir, who looks like he's going to be a productive player for them. Was making plays in the playoffs, late in the season. So you got him. You signed Curtis Samuel, who's a good player. You also signed Matt Collins and MVS and Chase Claypool. Again, not big names. Marquez Valdez-Scantling has won back-to-back Super Bowls, has made big catches in both postseason runs with the Chiefs. But he has a drop problem. And Chase Claypool, he looked like he was going to be a promising receiver. But, Pittsburgh got rid of him. It didn't work out with the Bears, and it didn't work out with the Dolphins either. So now he's with the Bills. And let's see what kind of role he has. And you got Matt Collins as well, who's kind of there for depth. But that's kind of your receiving core. But you also have Dalton Kincaid. You also have Dawson Knox, who are good. Dalton Kincaid's going to be a stud tight end for them. You got Dawson Knox, who's a decent tight end for them as well, who's been there. And then you got James Cook. And they were really using James Cook a lot last year. And he's going to have a big role in this offense in 2024. So, I think Josh Allen, he's going to have a good year. And that's, what's going to make this work is Josh Allen. And maybe with that cloud that was over them with Diggs, because with Diggs, there came some drama. Now, they were able to make it work, but I think it just got to that point where it was like, all right, we need to go our separate ways now. And I talked about this earlier in the offseason with that story that came out with Josh Allen yelling at Diggs after the loss to the Jets. Now, again, it was a frustrating loss, but you could also look at it as, well, that might have been, Josh Allen finally letting out his frustrations on Diggs, because every offseason it was something different. He'd just post something on social media, some cryptic post on, and you question, is he going to stay in Buffalo, or is this it? Now, I just assumed it was going to be more of the same this offseason, but then they finally traded him. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. And, the Bills, they got guys coming back that on defense, like Matt Milano. They missed him last year. You hope that, he can come back healthy. I mean, the Bills' defense still has talent. But now we got to see, because they let go of a lot of veteran guys, like Jordan Poyer. And I know Micah Hyde is still campaigning for coming back. He wants to play with Buffalo or no one else. And no one else. Shouldn't say or. And no one else. But he hasn't been signed, so that might not be happening. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. But like I said, me putting the Bills ahead of the Dolphins has a lot to do with their quarterback. Now, the turnovers have been a problem for Josh Allen, but that's just, he's a gunslinger, so it's going to happen. But it's going to be interesting, and how he's going to gel with him and his receiving core, how they're going to gel now with the changes. Because it's not just Diggs. Gabe Davis is not there either, but, I mean, again, I don't think losing Gabe Davis is the end of the world. And I don't think losing Stephon Diggs is the end of the world, because again, he was a non-factor. I mean, I think at times you're going to miss him, because I don't think he fell off. I think there might be some decline that's involved when it comes to Diggs, that he is declining as a receiver, a little bit. But I still think he could be a very good receiver. And I think he's going to do well in Houston. It just change of scenery. But, many people on social media, they talk about, well, this happened in Minnesota too. And now with him being in Houston, C.J. Stroud is not going to be forcing him the ball constantly. I mean, you got so many other playmakers around him. Stroud's going to be spreading the ball around. So if Diggs starts complaining about that, well, it's not going to work. But I think he's going to have a good year with the Texans. So, and the Texans and the Bills will play each other during the season. So looking forward to that matchup. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about the Bills. What do you see them doing this season? And listen, Josh Allen, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. I'm not going to say he's the best, but he's top 3, in my opinion. And I think most people would agree with that. So, with that, we are going to take our third break of the show. And then when we come back, we are going to talk about a couple of quarterbacks looking for new deals in Trevor Lawrence and Tua Tagovailoa. We'll get into that, where they are in their contract talks, and that is what we will do when we come back from our third break of the show. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the fourth part of the show, we are going to talk about Trevor Lawrence and Tua Tagovailoa, two guys that are looking for new deals. And we'll start off with Trevor Lawrence. So it seems like they're progressing, getting a new deal done. And, yeah, eventually they are going to get it. And Trevor Lawrence, looking to bounce back from the end of last year where, again, the Jags, they collapsed and Trevor Lawrence was dealing with a bunch of injuries. And they're going to get a new deal done. And I think Tua's going to get a new deal as well, which I think is going to be a mistake. But Trevor Lawrence will get... We're talking about Trevor Lawrence right now. It seems like it's going well. Yeah, negotiations are progressing well. They're hoping to finalize a deal soon. This extension is expected to exceed $50 million per year. And, again, they're trying to lock up their franchise guy. And, yeah, like I said, Trevor Lawrence coming off of a season, he passed for 4,000 yards, 21 touchdowns to 14 interceptions. So you would like the touchdowns to go up and the interceptions to go down. But, again, also was dealing with a ton of injuries towards the end of the year. And, yeah, he's looking to bounce back, like I said. And if he does bounce back, the Jags are going to be a good team. And they were looking to find consistency on offense last year. And when they were going through their struggles, they were still winning games. But, again, Trevor Lawrence ended up getting hurt. And things kind of just unraveled from there. And then when it comes to Tua, so the Dolphins apparently have made at least one offer to him, but it was rejected. Now, their contract talks are ongoing, and both sides are looking for a long-term agreement. Tua has missed some OTA time, potentially linked to the negotiations. And Tua is set to make $23.1 million next season in the final year of his rookie contract. And he's trying to get paid, like some of the guys that have gotten paid this offseason, like Jared Goff, who just got a new deal. Joe Burrow got paid. So he's looking to get big money. And last year, passed for 4,600 yards, 29 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. And, he's looking and had around the same numbers as Jared Goff, who had 30 touchdowns to 12 interceptions, although I think Jared Goff is the better quarterback. But, yeah, he's looking for a new deal. And against good teams last year, the Dolphins, the only team they beat on the road, the only team with a winning record that they beat were the Cowboys, who struggled on the road. They got blown out by the Ravens. They got blown out by the Bills. They lost the division in the final week of the regular season. You lost to the Chiefs twice. They lost to the Eagles when, the Eagles were still, before the collapse. That's the one thing that I look at, and that's why I had the Dolphins ranked third in my AFC East rankings. The Dolphins were not good against good teams. And you also saw when they lost Tyreek Hill in that game against the Titans, Tua did not play well. And, I've said this with other quarterbacks. You want to surround them with as much talent as possible. So, you can't be like, you could say, well, it's because of Tyreek Hill that, Tua had this good year. And he has a lot to do with it. But what do you want the Dolphins to do? Say, you know what, Tyreek Hill, you stand off to the side. Let's see what Tua is really made of. And then we'll pay him. It's not going to happen. But, yeah, I have my concerns with Tua. Now, thankfully for him, he stayed healthy the whole year. Because he had a lot of injury scares the previous season with the concussions, and, there was all that speculation on his career and if he's going to be able to continue playing. But thankfully last year, he was able to stay healthy and, had a good season. But back to the performance side of things, because like I said, health comes first. And he was able to stay healthy, and there were no problems. And, I think many football fans were happy about that. But now when it comes back to the performance side of things, for me, I don't think he's the long-term answer. But like I said earlier in the show, what's the alternative? Then you got to look for another quarterback. And the Dolphins, on the offensive side of the ball, have a ton of playmakers. You look at the running backs, you look at the receivers. I mean, they got track stars all over the place. But when we talk about the best quarterbacks in the NFL, those guys elevate the guys around them. Tua does not. Tua benefits from the guys around him. The guys bring him up. And that is what's going to hold this team back. Because I think this team is very good. But the most important position, the quarterback position, is lacking. And that's why, if they give him a big contract, it's going to be a mistake. Now look at me, I'm a Giant fan. They gave Daniel Jones a contract, and that was a mistake. Now we'll see what happens this year. But sometimes, paying the quarterback might not be the best move. But because it depends on who it is, obviously. I mean, the Lions were paying Jared Goff. Yeah, that was the right thing to do. Because I think Jared Goff's a better quarterback than Tua. I mean, the Bengals paying Joe Burrow. I mean, Joe Burrow is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. He's been to a Super Bowl. Tua hasn't really done anything. And he's got a lot of talent around him. And like I said, they gave away the division. They had a chance to win it and get the 2 seed against the Bills, and they lost that game. That was on Sunday Night Football. And then you got to go play in Kansas City in very cold weather, beyond cold weather, and you ended up losing that. And you were one and done. So, yeah, this is a big year for him, and curious to see how that all plays out. But yeah, I mean, if the Dolphins pay him, then they just got to deal with the consequences if it ends up not panning out. But, you got so many of these other quarterbacks in the AFC that are just better. That's what's going to hold the Dolphins back. And like I said, they were not good against playoff teams last year. The only game they won against a team that was over 500 was the Cowboys, who struggled on the road. And you look at the games that they had against, the Commanders and dropping 70 points against the Dolphins. Yeah, that was great. Watching, like I said, the track stars running all over the field. You're like, man, this offense is explosive. But then you see them go up against these playoff teams, and you're like, well, that's all just, they're frauds, as people would say. So, and I think Mike McDaniel's a good coach. He's one of the better offensive minds in the league, but like I said, the quarterback position is what is going to hold you back. So, but these two quarterbacks here, they will get their new deals. Trevor Lawrence, I think, is the better quarterback of the two. And I think that he's in for a big year in 2024 to show that he is the guy. And for Tua, he's going to have to do the same thing. But for me, personally, I have more faith in Trevor Lawrence than I do in Tua. And I also don't like saying that because Tua is a fellow left-hander. And I want to see him do well. And another lefty quarterback, Michael Penix. He's not going to be starting right away, but, listen, I appreciate that as a lefty myself. So I want to see Tua do well from that aspect, but and he has done well, but it's just taking that next step. Are the Dolphins going to be a team that could be a threat in the AFC? And because of him, I don't see it. I just think you got teams that are just better. They got better quarterbacks too. So, but that's just my opinion. Let me know what you guys think about these two quarterbacks. Would you pay these two quarterbacks, or are you trying to look for other options? I mean, when it comes to Trevor Lawrence, I think, I'm confident in him. Tua, for the long term, I don't really have that same confidence. But let me know what you guys think about these two quarterbacks and how you think they'll play in 2024. So when we come back from our final break of the show, we will talk about the New York Giants, talk about their defensive line, get into, talking about Brian Burns, the newly acquired Giant from this offseason. So that's what we will get into when we come back from our final break of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the final part of the show, we're going to talk about the Giants' defense, talk about that, and just I think there's some excitement around at least their defense. I just wanted to get into that, talk about Brian Burns, that defensive line, what to expect from them. And like I said earlier in the show, when I opened the show, when it comes to the offensive side of the ball, the Giants might not be very good in 2024. But I think for me, they are heading in some sort of direction. They're heading in the right direction, I think. It's just the hardest part is going to be finding the right quarterback because they don't have it on the roster. And we'll see if Daniel Jones proves me wrong, but I just don't see it. And even if he does play well, what if he gets hurt again? So the offensive side of the ball, it's going to be frustrating to watch, and it really has been for many years. But I think this Giants defense, you got to be excited because they added Brian Burns. They signed him to that 5-year extension, $150 million. And now you're pairing him up with Kayvon Thibodeau and Dexter Lawrence. And I think that defensive line is going to be a problem for quarterbacks this upcoming year. It's just, again, they might not score a lot of points. And, you got Kayvon Thibodeau, led the Giants in sacks last season, 11.5 sacks, and finishing 4th in Defensive Rookie of the Year voting in 2022. Burns has never had fewer than 7.5 sacks in a season, totaling 46 in his career. And I wanted to pull up I did have his individual stats up earlier before I came on here. So for his career, like I said, 46 sacks. But 7.5 sacks his rookie season, and he was drafted the same year as Dexter Lawrence. Then he had 9 in 2020, 9 in 2021, 12.5 in 2022, and then 8 last season. So now you're adding that with Kayvon Thibodeau and Dexter Lawrence. And for me, I'm excited because, like when it comes to the Giants defense, that was another side of the team that has been lacking, and they really haven't had a pass rush. And I know from, the articles that I was reading, they were talking about, you go back to, Strahan and, Justin Tuck and O.C. Umenyiora, and then, of course, Strahan retired, but then you had those guys still with JPP. And the Giants were looking for that. I mean, they tried to patch that up in 2016 when they got Olivier Vernon and Damon Snacks Harrison. But, that was kind of a fluky year, that whole team. They went 11-5, but it's just that was kind of unfortunately, a fraudulent team, because then they played the Packers in Lambeau and they lost 38-13. And that season ended with a thud. And that was Eli Manning's last playoff game, unfortunately. Couldn't see him go out he did kind of go out on a high note because Daniel Jones got hurt and he was able to at least start one more game at home and win that. But, yeah, I was kind of hoping for a better ending to Eli's career. But, again, that's in the past. But, yeah, with this Giants defense now, they're trying to build a defensive line and have success. And like I said, that's something to get excited over. You got these two pass rushers on the outside, and then you got, of course, Dexter Lawrence coming up the middle as well. And I'm looking forward to that, to see how, Burns, Thibodeau, and Dexter Lawrence all do together. And, we'll see what they can accomplish. Again, I don't expect the Giants to do too much this year. I think this is another building block, and I think the following season, that's, you're hoping that they're going to take an even bigger step forward and be a more competitive team. Because, 2022, you thought, okay, they made the playoffs, they're ahead of schedule, and then just everything that could go wrong went wrong for them last year. And it really all started when they lost 40-0 to Dallas. And I just wanted to bring up something. So I was at another wedding recently, and again, this is more for basketball, but I was telling my friends before the Knicks played on Sunday that the last time that I went to a wedding and a New York team was playing, I sent the picture of, the scoreboard, and Cowboys winning 40-0 over Dallas, or over the Giants. So I wasn't really confident about the Knicks winning, and of course, I was at another wedding, and another New York team lost, and that was the Knicks getting eliminated on Sunday. Other than that, it was a great time. It's just the Knicks losing was that hurt. But yeah, so we'll see what happens when I go to two more weddings later in the year and into next year. But yeah, just wanted to bring that up as well. But yeah, everything went wrong for the Giants after that. After they lost 40-0 to Dallas, I'm like, this team is not going to be good. And they weren't. But I think they're heading in the right direction. Because I still believe in the coach, kind of. Although, well, in the beginning of the year, I was like, all right, we're back to square one again with Dable. But I know it kind of hurt their draft positioning, but they did play better towards the end of the year. They were competitive against some playoff teams. They beat some playoff teams. They beat the Packers, and they should have beaten the Rams. But I feel like it's like that with the Giants every year. Oh, they should have beaten this team. They should have beaten this team. But yeah, they showed me something towards the end of the year where I do still have some confidence in Brian Dable, and I have confidence in Joe Shane. So again, it's tough right now at the quarterback position, but they're building a good defense. They are. And they made some smart moves. Bobby Okereke was a solid player for them last year, getting him from the Colts. That's another position that's been lacking in recent years for the Giants, was linebacker. And they got a productive player out of Bobby Okereke. And you got young guys in the secondary. So they're building something. Now, losing Wink Martindale Yeah, that was tough. And we'll see, because they got the defensive coordinator over from the Titans. We'll see how he is with these guys, but this defense is going to be good. I think if there's one thing you could look forward to, like I said, with the Giants, is their defensive line. I think their defensive line is going to be really good. And you're hoping their defense could keep you in games, because if you can get at least some competent quarterback play, and this offense can at least, be decent, maybe the Giants can win a few more games than we imagine. But you look at their schedule. I think it's from like weeks 3 to 8. That is a brutal stretch. You got the Bengals in there. You got the Cowboys, the Eagles. I think they play the entire AFC North. So, and how many times have I talked about that division and how it's the best division in football? Yeah, I was watching the Michael Kay show, and they had the Giants. I think someone had them going. I don't know if it was Michael Kay. I think he had them going like 10-7 or 9-8. I'm like, I don't see the Giants winning. I see the Giants winning 6 or 7 games. I do not see them winning a lot of games, but we'll see what happens. And I know I didn't really go through some of the other games from the schedule. We will do that. We'll go through the other matchups, the primetime games throughout the week. I'll also start going through each team's individual schedules and kind of just do early win-loss predictions. I know, because this weekend was just crazy. I just, I do want to get to that. So I know I didn't do that today, but we'll get into each team's individual schedules as well. And like I said, I want to go through all the primetime matchups, talk about some of the big games coming up. Well, obviously when we get to them, because we're still in May. So, but yeah, so we'll get into each team's individual schedules. We'll go through at least one team per show. Like I said, just kind of do like a win-loss prediction. And yeah, so that's what's coming up. And then I have one more divisional rankings tomorrow. We'll get into the AFC West, which is kind of going to be easy, in my opinion. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it for the show for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. It's good to be back. I'll be back again tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Same time as always. And yeah, make sure to check out all the other shows on the network. Again, cover pretty much every sport. And everybody's doing a great job. So, like I said, make sure to go check out all the other shows. Give them some love as well. But yeah, that is all the time that we have for today. Once again, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back again tomorrow, same time, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. And until then, I'm Kenneth Gruenfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys next time. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.